Junko Furuta is the name of a Japanese student, whose fate is one of the most brutal ones I've ever had to research for videos so far. This video talks about her abduction, as well as the 44 days of pure suffering that followed her kidnapping. The case of Junko Furuta is one of the worst examples of torture in the history of Japan. I feel it is my obligation to make the following disclaimer. This video is not for the faint of heart. If this topic is a trigger for you, I would recommend skipping this video. Junko Furuta was born on January 18, 1971 in Misato, a small city in Japan. Her and her brother grew up together with their parents. Junko later attended the Yasho Minami High School in Misato. She was well behaved and a very good student. Junko was shy and a bit reserved at times, but had a good group of friends who appreciated her kindness. After school, Junko worked a side job in order to increase her family's standard of living. After graduating school, she was going to go to work for an electronics retailer, and she already had a job offer. Junko appeared to have a happy life, with plans for the future, but unfortunately things didn't quite work out that way for her. The abduction. We are in the year 1988. At this time, Junko was 17 years old and very popular in high school and with the boys. But due to her shyness, Junko was overwhelmed by all of this attention. She does not want to be part of the city's party scene and is also not interested in meeting boys. This was much to the regret of her classmate Hiroshi Miyano, who was into her. In the fall of 1988, he asked Junko out on a date, but Junko politely declined. She did not like Hiroshi very much, because he was considered rude and had a reputation to be violent. She did not want to go out with someone like that. Hiroshi could not believe that someone was turning him down, especially not someone like Junko. He had never experienced that before. Nobody had ever said no to him, because it was a known fact that he had criminal ties to Japan's Yakuza scene, so everyone feared him. Blind with rage, he came up with the plan to take revenge on Junko, but he would not get an opportunity for a while. This changed on November 25, 1988. Around 8:30 p.m., Hiroshi was out driving around with his friend, Nobuharu Minato. The two had committed many crimes together in the past, and this day, they were randomly robbing women out on the street. This is when they ran into Junko, who was just on the way home from the side job. Junko, who was traveling by bike, did not immediately notice the two. Hiroshi ordered Nobuharu to kick Junko off of her bicycle. He followed the order. This is when Nobuharu fled the scene, and Hiroshi ran over to Junko to play the knight in shining armor. He helped her up, and acted as if he had just witnessed the incident, and was there by coincidence. To make sure that she was safe, he insisted to take Junko home. The 17-year-old was thankful for that and had no idea what her classmate was planning. Hiroshi took her to a warehouse close by, where he overpowered her and locked her up. What came next were 44 days of captivity that were nothing but pure hell. "44 days of hell." You may want to skip the next scenes if you are sensitive, but even if you aren't, please know that this is the most brutal case I've ever heard of. I had to take several breaks throughout my research, because I could not and did not want to believe what they did to Junko. This is also meant to be a trigger warning regarding rape and violence. I still decided to talk about this case, because I feel terribly sorry for Junko, and I don't want her to be ever forgotten about. Day 1. On the first day, Hiroshi beat Junko and raped her several times, while constantly threatening to kill her if she tried to flee. Afterwards, he took her to a close-by hotel, from where he called his friends Nobuharu Minato, Joe Ogura, and Yasushi Watanabe. During the phone call, he bragged about the kidnapping and the rape. The three friends, who also had ties to the Yakuza scene, asked him to not let Junko go yet, so that she could be abused by the other man. The 4 youngsters had already gang raped other women in the past. Day 2. Hiroshi is still threatening Junko. She was told that if she didn't comply, or if she fought back, he would send members of the Yakuza to her house to kill her family. Junko was so scared that she obeyed. Hiroshi brought her to a park where he met his 3 friends. Together they went to a house in the neighborhood of Wadaki. The house belonged to Nobuharu's parents. That was the house where Junko was held captive and where they tortured her from that point forward. Day 3. It was November 27th when Junko's parents filed a missing persons report with the police. When Hiroshi found out, he forced Junko to call them and tell them that she ran away from home and was planning to stay with a friend from now on. He also made her ask her parents to stop any police investigation. Later that day, Nobuharu's parents arrived at the house where Junko was held. The boys forced Junko to act like the girlfriend of one of them. Nobuharu's parents believed the lie at first, but then, a few days later, they began to see through it. But because they were so scared of the Yakuza, they did not report it to the police. Going forward, the boys didn't pretend anymore, because they realized that they did not have anything to be nervous about. Even when Nobuharu's brother found out about the abduction, he didn't tell anyone. He was also too afraid of retaliation. Day 7. After a week of captivity, Junko had been raped over 100 times by the 4 boys and other gang members. By that time, she was no longer allowed to wear any clothes around the house. The 4 teenagers continued to beat her and made her starve. During the night, she was forced to sleep on a balcony despite the freezing temperatures, and during the day, they locked her into a freezer for hours. Junko lost more and more strength every day. Day 9. On day 9, she managed to run to the phone and call the police. But before she could say anything, Hiroshi overpowered her. When the police called back, they were told that it had been an accidental call. The boys punished her for the behavior by pouring a flammable liquid over her legs and lighting it on fire. Due to the pain and injuries, Junko suffered a cramp attack, but the boys, who thought that she was just faking, lit her legs on fire another time. Day 16. After more than 2 weeks of captivity, Junko was severely dehydrated. She was only allowed to drink her own urine, and the captors forced her to eat cockroaches. Day 26. The torturous behavior of the boys increasingly escalated, and they did unspeakable things to Junko. Things that I do not want to describe here in further detail. Day 30. Junko repeatedly asked to be killed, so that she would no longer have to endure the brutal torture. Day 36. At this point, Junko Furuta was severely disfigured. They had pulled out her fingernails and burned her eyelids. Finally, the man lost sexual interest in her, so they kidnapped another 19-year-old and raped her. Day 40. The boys forced Junko to play a game of mahjong with them. Despite her poor condition, Junko somehow managed to win. This made the 4 boys very angry. They beat her with a metal weight and poured more flammable liquid over her. Then they light her on fire again. The entire attack lasted over 2 hours. In the days following this incident, Junko dies from the severity of her injuries. After the murder. Not wanting to be convicted of murder, the boys packed Junko's body in a duffel bag, and then placed the bag in a large rolling hoop barrel. They filled the barrel with wet concrete and dumped it on a remote strip of land the next day. On January 23, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for the rape of the other 19-year-old girl. Investigators did not know anything about Junko at that time. On March 29, 1989, the two were re-interviewed. 9 days before Junko's kidnapping, a young mother and 7-year-old child were murdered close by. This case is still considered unsolved today. However, Hiroshi misunderstood the question he was being asked in the interview and came to the conclusion that they were asking about Junko. Since he assumed that Joe Ogura had confessed, he told investigators where to find her body. The cops were confused at first, but then decided to follow the lead anyway, and looked for the barrel with Junko's body at the spot that had been described to them. Her body was so badly disfigured that she could only be identified through her fingerprints. During the autopsy that followed, it was discovered that Junko had been pregnant due to the rapes. The two young men were then arrested. When Junko's mother was told what had happened to her daughter, she collapsed and had to be committed to a psychiatric ward. Hiroshi and Joe were 18 years old at the time of the crime, Yasushi 17 and Nobuharu 16 years. They all changed their names after the details became known. The judges had assured them that they would be able to remain anonymous, but Shuken Banshin magazine published their full names anyway. By reconstructing the events, investigators were able to determine that Junko was raped over 400 times by over 100 men. They were able to track down some of them, while others could not be identified. However, since most of these men were still minors, their sentences were generally pretty low. They also learned that on day 16 of the kidnapping, a young man named Koichi Aihara was forced by the group to rape Junko. As soon as he got home, Koichi told his brother about Junko, who told his parents. The police was alerted, and a unit was sent to the Minado's house. The boys opened the door and denied that Junko was with them and that the incident had happened. They even offered the policemen to come into the house, which they declined. Since the boys had been so polite, they figured that they would have never asked them to come in if they had something to hide. The policemen were later terminated from their job because of their behavior and were forced to move away to a different town, since they received so much backlash from the general public. In July 1990, the court read the verdict. Hiroshi was sentenced to 20 years in prison, Joe Ogura to 8 years, and Yasushi and Nobuharu to 6 and 8 years. The sentences were particularly mild, again, because of their age. The population felt the punishment was not severe enough and confronted the boys' families with so much hatred that they had to move away. Hiroshi's mother didn't blame her son. She blamed Junko for her son's imprisonment and went to vandalize the girl's grave. But the boys didn't seem to have learned from their punishment either. After their release from prison, most of them committed additional crimes. And this brings us to the end of today's video. I think this is the most brutal case that I've ever talked about so far. This young girl had to endure 44 days of hideous torture, and there were countless people who were in the know, but didn't do anything to protect her or help save her life. It is hard to imagine how cruel those 6 weeks must have been for Junko. This act leaves you truly shocked and speechless. I still hope you liked the video. If so, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up or leave a comment in the comment section. And please also feel free to follow me on Instagram, you can find the link in the video description. Thank you in advance, and I also appreciate you for watching. See you again for the next video. Good night and see you soon.